Hello, everyone who's joined us early. We'll be starting at 6 o'clock, so you won't hear much until then. Thank you. Hello to everyone who's joined us early. Once again, we'll be starting at 6 o'clock, so if you just bear with us, thank you. Good evening. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you. Hello there and good evening and welcome to our National Education Union big announcement. I'm going to explain some of the accessibility features on this call. There's already a lot of people on the call already watching on Zoom or on social media. So we have Nikki Evans and later Sam Riddle providing BSL interpretation services for those who require it on these calls. We also have subtitles. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a button that says View Subtitles. If you press that button, you'll be able to see live subtitles live on the call. So if we also have a team of staff assisting, so if you need any help, put a message into the chat. This will just be speakers. We won't have questions today. So I'm just going to hand over to Daniel Cabedi for our Vice President. I just want to say that today's going to be a very exciting event that I've been very proud to be involved in as an NEU staff member. So thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. And welcome to this evening's special announcement. My name is Daniel Kebede. I am your elected National Senior Vice President, and I'm also a full-time teacher. And like many of you, I love my job. I love working with children, witnessing the joy of education, watching our young people experience, develop and learn. And sadly, this in the main is being done remotely due to the high levels of virus transmission. However, our members have been working incredibly hard to provide remote education throughout this pandemic. Safety must be this government's top priority for our schools, for our colleagues, and for our communities. So we believe that they were right to limit attendance of children in schools and move to remote education. However, we all know too well how poverty can limit a child's access to their education. This was certainly the case prior to COVID-19, and as COVID-19 continues to impact on families across the country, we know our children face their toughest challenge yet. I've had the privilege of educating young people in the London Borough of Lambeth and also in the northeast of England, and whether a child is from Stockwell or Stockton, their challenges are often joined. Insecure housing, inadequate clothing, not enough good quality food to eat, and too often without the basics that they need to learn. Laptops, Wi-Fi, even pens and paper. Now, as educators, we know firsthand how poverty limits the life chances of children and significantly affects their educational experience and outcomes in school. And this pandemic is making things so much worse. We have 9 children in every class of 30 living in poverty, a staggering 4.2 million children in the 6th richest economy in the world, a figure that should horrify us all and that is only increasing. The IFS predict that unless there is a significant shift in government policy, by 2022, the 4.2 million will become 5.2 million. Now, child poverty is often portrayed as an individual issue. It's often misconstrued as a problem caused by parents. However, as educators, we know this not to be true. Poverty impacting on the children is a structural issue, but more than that, it's very much a political choice. The overwhelming majority of children in poverty in our classrooms have parents in work. However, their parents face low pay, They face precarious 0-hour contracts and inadequate in-work benefits. Child poverty is a sickness created by a system that doesn't work for many, and our children are never to blame. And the government themselves, despite being the architects of a decade-long austerity agenda, recognise that child poverty is a key issue of our time. With a little help from Marcus Rashford, they've extended free school meals over the holiday period. And despite not moving fast enough, the government have begun rolling out laptops to those in need. This is an acknowledgement of the endemic poverty that exists in this country. Now, the government have not done enough to support our children to learn safely at home, and this is causing stress and anxiety amongst families, but it's also widening the learning gap for our children. We've had teachers, heads, support staff tackling poverty on the ground and ensuring communities they serve are not left behind. In Croydon and Lambeth, educators have worked with communities to deliver learning packs. In the northeast of England, we've been supporting a campaign with our local paper to ensure that young people are able to access laptops when they don't have one. The NEU has taken inspiration from our members, and we will step up where the government has let us down. So I shall now pass over to our Joint General Secretary, Mary Bousted.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, and good evening, everyone. I just want to say before I start that this is not an announcement about school reopening or otherwise. The government has not made, not given us any announcement about school reopening. It's about something that the National Education Union is doing to support children in the most desperate need, working with the Mirror in a new campaign. And the new campaign is called Help a Child to Learn. And we know that throughout this pandemic, teachers and support staff and leaders have stepped up. And despite the terrible press that they get from the right-wing media, we know that you're working harder than ever to educate children either in school if they're vulnerable or key worker children, or remotely. And it's been the toughest year that you've had as a profession, because the demands of remote education and supporting children in school really add very significantly to workload. And you've all gone above and beyond the call of duty, and the nation's children and parents should be thanking you, and so many of them are thanking you. I think it was really interesting when Gavin Williamson said that if parents weren't happy about remote education, they should complain to Ofsted. Ofsted got over 13,500 emails from parents saying, well, come along and have a look at my school and the remote education that they're providing, because it's absolutely brilliant. They only got 250 emails with a complaint. So that just shows the job that teachers and support staff and leaders are doing to really look after the children and young people you're working with. And I've been really inspired and moved by that effort, which I know is at huge personal expense. I know that people are absolutely exhausted. So we want to help. And today I'm really excited to announce a new initiative that our union, the National Education Union, is launching with the Mirror. It's a joint campaign with the Daily Mirror and it's a national appeal to supply learning materials needed for children and young people in the most disadvantaged schools, so that they are able to learn remotely and safely at home. The campaign is called Help a Child to Learn, and your union, the National Education Union, is pledging £1 million to it. The money is going to go directly to schools to enable them to buy the learning materials their pupils need to continue learning at home. Now, we know, we've done a survey with you, our members, and we know that many children don't have the tools, the essential tools that they need to learn from home. For example, they don't have pens, they don't have paper, they don't have color crayons to color with, they don't have glue sticks to do work with, they don't have art materials, they don't have, in secondary, they don't have exercise books to write in. And so that's why we are, the National Education Union and the Daily Mirror, are stepping up and with our Help a Child to Learn campaign. And what we're going to be doing initially is making contact with schools with the greatest number of children with free school meals. So schools with the very highest need in every region of England and Wales will be contacted. And what we're going to do is we're going to offer schools, depending on their size and their pupil intake, either £500 to small primary schools, £1,000 to average primary schools with 2 form entry and special schools, and 1,500 to large primaries and secondary schools. The funding will be delivered to schools by our partner Viking in the form of a voucher, and schools will be able to use the voucher on purchasing the learning materials that they need in the way that they judge will have the most impact on the students that they teach. We know we're not trying to dictate this to you. We're not sending you food parcels or voucher parcels with the stationery we think that you need. We're giving you the voucher, your school needed the voucher, to purchase the stationery and learning materials that your pupils need. We think this is really important. There is this huge digital poverty in this country, but there's also poverty of children using toilet paper to work on because they don't have paper in the home. Cutting boxes up so they can write on cardboard boxes because they don't have paper at home, and being acutely embarrassed because they don't have the maths equipment, they don't have the exercise book, they don't have just the basics that they need. So when the teacher says, go and get a piece of paper, they don't have that piece of paper. And if you can imagine the level of poverty that has resulted in that want, it is really shocking. So we did a survey of our members. We got the results back yesterday, and the results are shocking as well. 95% of those who responded to our survey are currently teaching students with no access or very limited access to basic learning resources at home. And 1 in 4 respondents to our survey told us that more than half of the pupils that they teach don't have access to basic learning materials at home. So that's why we have launched this campaign, and that's why we are donating £1 million to schools in the greatest need throughout England and Wales, so that the pupils who need it most can get a piece of paper, can get a pen, can do artwork, can use a glue stick, can write in an exercise book, can get the maths equipment or the other equipment that they need in order to work at home. Now, last week, the Sutton Trust called for immediate pupil premium boost of £750 million from the government to schools to continue learning in lockdown. And we support this recommendation, and we hope that Gavin Williamson and Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson will pledge to make this investment in young people and their future. It's also important to know, teachers who are on the call tonight, that the NEU has launched a remote learning hub to support you in high quality remote education. And do go on our remote learning hub. It's a fantastic resource. It's got a section on the best ideas for teaching remotely and getting your pupils to learn remotely. It's got a resource sharing hub called the Guild, where members can go and they can share ideas and resources that they have found really useful. So do go on that website. It's really fantastic. I want to finish with this. 1 million is a bold start to a bold initiative, but we know it's not enough. And that's why we're appealing as well to the general public to support Help a Child to Learn and donate what they feel able that they can donate. We can't reach every child, we know that, but we're determined to do what we can. And we've also launched a petition calling for immediate as well as long-term action to eradicate the scourge of child poverty from the UK. I mean, you know, in 2021, we have children who don't know where the next meal comes from. We have children living in inadequate, overcrowded accommodation where they can't work. We have children whose lives are so limited because their parents don't have the money to give them the social and cultural experiences that their more fortunate friends have. We have children coming to school in the middle of winter in summer shoes because their parents can't afford shoes. The scale of child poverty, as Daniel said, 9 in every class of 30 will be poor. It's utterly shocking. We can't do everything, but we're doing what we can. And that is why we've launched this initiative. Many children feel ashamed of their poverty. Many don't want to switch on the Zoom camera because they don't want their other classmates to see the conditions in which they live. And so we want them to know that your union, the National Education Union, does care about them and cares about our members. And we want to stand firmly with you and by you in these toughest of times. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much. £1 million is very bold. We know it's not going to reach everyone, but the louder we make our voices heard as members, the more we can encourage people to sign the petition and get involved, the greater impact we will have. And we're really pleased to be joined in this campaign by the Daily Mirror. So welcome to their assistant editor, Jason Beattie.
Thanks very much for inviting me to speak today. And it's a pleasure to follow powerful speeches by yourself, Daniel, and Mary. I should say at the start of this, my father was a teacher, and my sister's a TA, my aunts and uncles are teachers, and 2 of my cousins are teachers. So if any members of my family are listening today, can I apologise to them in advance for letting my family down? When the NEU approached the Mirror about this campaign, we leapt at the chance, and the reason we did was quite simple. It wasn't just about the opportunity to help pupils that inspired us. It was because of the shared values between the Mirror and the NEU. You know, we're proud at our paper to support public sector workers. It's our readers who suffer when services are cut. It's our readers who are affected when services are contracted out. It's our readers whose children and grandchildren often cannot afford the extracurricular activities, the pens, the paper, and the learning materials which we're now campaigning to provide. But it goes deeper than that, and I'm going to echo comments which have gone before, because we all know this campaign shouldn't be necessary. That's the blunt truth. And we know that if we really want to make a difference, we've got to tackle the causes of injustice, not the outcomes of injustice. And just to give you a bit of background, this is what the Mirror does. This is why last March, for instance, we launched a campaign called Give Me 5, demanding a £5 increase in child benefit to prevent more children going into poverty. It's why we returned to the issue in November and devoted 6 pages to families who are struggling on low wages or unemployment or benefit cuts. So, you know, this is the core of what we do at the paper. It's important to us. And I know none of this will surprise you. You know, you see the consequences of austerity as teachers on a daily basis. You know, you're the ones who see firsthand the families who have to choose between heating and eating, let alone being able to afford notepads. You know, you're not surprised that the stories we've heard today about children having to use cotton buds for paintbrushes, or doing their homework on the inside of a cereal box, or using a flyer pushed through a leaf of the post box because they haven't got any other writing material. So that doesn't surprise you. And you probably have a better understanding of anyone of how hard it must be to homeschool if you're a large family living in cramped accommodation. You know, I'm a lucky one. My kids have grown up now, but I couldn't imagine what it'd be like if all 3 of them were still with me now, trying to help them at all with their learning. Not that I'm trying to help, you know, the teachers on the other side of the family. But I think the story, and as I work in the media, I perhaps shouldn't admit this, but I think the story which goes underreported is how often teachers go above and beyond to help children who don't have enough to eat, whose families can't afford proper clothing, as Mary referred to earlier, and who don't have access to books or tablets or other learning materials. And we also know the price that you've paid during COVID. And, you know, that's one of the reasons we've been pushing quite hard in the last few days for teachers to get priority once the elderly and the clinically vulnerable have been vaccinated for the vaccine. We think that's really important. You know, my colleague Rosalind Jones, who I like to describe as the consciousness of the paper, the conscience of the paper, you know, she reported last week of 2 teachers, Donna Coleman and Alan Fitchard, who lost their lives to COVID. And, you know, these figures are shocking. There's more than 35,000 teachers and TAs and support staff have been off sick with COVID or self-isolating since this pandemic began. So I want to say thank you. Thank you not so much for reaching out to us and working with us, but thank you for the work you do. Kind of one of my bugbears is when people talk about the tabloid press and they use it as shorthand for the right-wing press. And I want to stress, not all tabloids are the same. Yes, we get things wrong, but we entertain as well as inform. But that's part and parcel of what a good paper should be. But everything we do, everything is driven by a commitment to kind of hold power to account. It's about having fairness at the heart of what we write. And it's about embracing inclusion and diversity and standing up for those who don't have a voice. And which is why, as I said at the beginning, that's also what the NEU strives to do. So I'm really proud to be part of this partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jason. And it's good to be working with you to get our message out and shine a light on the blight of child poverty. It's vitally important that we sound the alarm on this. It's important to also announce that on Thursday, we will be publishing our education recovery plan, which will set out what needs to be done to get children back to school safely. It will be an updated version from what was published in June, but we are protecting members at work and helping our children to learn and getting a plan for our children back to school safely. I would like to now introduce a colleague who I've worked with in the Northeast over many years, a fantastic activist and art teacher, Sarah Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Daniel. This is about so much more than laptops. For over a decade now, successive governments have underfunded and fragmented our schools and denigrated our profession. Against a backdrop of austerity, which saw every support system stripped from our communities, we have also seen subjects disappear from the curriculum, witnessed the imposition of the exam factory, and as a natural consequence, seen mental health concerns in children skyrocket. It should come as no surprise then, when the promised support for disadvantaged children failed to materialise. In June last year, the National Education Union wrote to the Prime Minister with a clearly worded 10-point recovery plan for children and young people. This plan set out ways in which to mitigate the impact of poverty on learning, such as providing internet access and laptops, simple solutions which are still not properly in place. It suggested alterations to national exams to ensure equity, another suggestion ignored by government, only for the exams debacle to blow up in their faces in August, causing untold stress and anxiety to our students and their families. Perhaps most importantly of all, we recommended commandeering unused community spaces as temporary classrooms and bringing teachers back into the profession in order to create smaller class sizes to limit infection. Simple measures such as these would have allowed children to return to their schools in a safer, more controlled way, and would undoubtedly have saved many lives. School staff want to be at work. We want our children to be at school, but if we cannot be at school safely, then we will work tirelessly to ensure that our students receive the very best remote education we can offer them. The children I teach are from one of the most deprived and impoverished areas in the country. Over the last decade, the school I work in has seen redundancies, increased class sizes, and the loss of vital support staff. Several subjects have vanished from the curriculum. I began working there in 2009, and the changes since then have left it unrecognisable. The devastation this government have inflicted on communities like that of my school have had an enormous impact on the learning going on within, and their failure to live up to their own promises during this pandemic continue to impact on my students' ability to learn today. My colleagues and I are working around the clock, finding ways to make learning accessible for all. As an art teacher, this has been a particular challenge for me, and I have found myself raiding my kitchen cupboards at home to figure out what I can successfully repurpose as paint. Just yesterday, I uploaded a video tutorial for my GCSE students in which I explain how to make a PVA glue substitute out of flour and water, and demonstrated how to use paint, how to use instant coffee as paint and a cotton bud as a paintbrush. On a live lesson over Teams with Year 9, I found myself explaining that it doesn't matter if they don't have any paper. There are famous artists who have drawn on the back of envelopes. I've learned that by opening up a cereal box and working on the plain cardboard, you have a pretty decent substitute for cartridge paper. Our school has been doing what every school has been doing during this crisis. We have continued to provide an education for all. We are still the safe space our vulnerable students need. We have been the childcare provider for our vital key workers, and we have continued to feed our students and their families. The Multi-Academy Trust my school is part of took an early decision to provide free school meals throughout the school holidays, while the government wavered and were eventually shamed into action by public outcry. We are neither special nor different from any other school in the country. School staff everywhere have risen to this challenge, and I am so proud to be part of the front line of workers trying to retain a small sense of normality for children in an ever more frightening world. It is particularly galling, therefore, that the government seem to have pitted themselves against us, and instead of working with us on how to make schools safe or how to best move education to remote provision, they have chosen to ignore the people who spend their working lives in school. This stance of resolutely choosing not to listen to experts was faintly humorous as a soundbite in 2016, but we have all now seen the consequences of this dangerous mindset play out. When Gavin Williamson set out his argument for the wider reopening of schools last summer, he attempted to appeal to the natural sympathies of a profession who know only too well the impact of poverty on education. His statement, "The poorest children, the most disadvantaged children, the children who do not always have the support they need at home, will be the ones who fall furthest behind if we keep school gates closed," was extraordinary because it was and is the truth. His open admission that he not only knows and accepts that there is extreme poverty in this country, but that it impacts on children, certainly sets him apart from some of his colleagues, but it is disingenuous at best when taken in context. This government not only know about the extremes of poverty in this country, they have created them. In 2019, the National Education Union surveyed thousands of school leaders, teachers and support staff. 9 out of 10 reported that poverty and low income were having a detrimental effect on their pupils' education. Dr. Bousted, who you've heard from this evening, said at the time, the government must stop blaming schools for the impact of its austerity policies upon the most vulnerable in our society and take action to alleviate the suffering of the increasing numbers who are living in poverty. This came mere months after the government had chosen to dismiss the damning report by Professor Philip Alston, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, who pointed out that in the 5th largest economy, the UK has child poverty rates of as high as 40%. In his unflinching report, he said, "For almost 1 in every 2 children to be poor in 21st century Britain is not just a disgrace, but a social calamity and an economic disaster, all rolled into one." That was in 2019, and we are undoubtedly in a worse position now. Despite knowing that many families have suffered during this crisis due to high levels of job insecurity, and that an additional 200,000 pupils were now eligible for free school meals, the government quietly cut £250 million from its pupil premium budget in December, simply by altering the date the census is taken. They did this with no notice, and the repercussions are huge. It is clear that despite being fully aware of the levels of poverty in our country, not only are the government unwilling to alleviate it in any meaningful way, but they're also ready to exploit it for financial gain. Insecure work, anxiety, joblessness and stress have all increased at an alarming rate. So many families are struggling, and although schools are doing everything they can to help, they can't fix the scale of the problems inflicted. What we can do is fix the immediate issues. We know that many parents are struggling with helping their children to learn at home, but many are having to attempt to do this using mobile data on their phones. No laptop, no printer, and image-heavy files, which of course cost more to download. Many schools have posted work out. Communities have donated laptops, and local businesses have even offered their services in printing schoolwork. This runs so much deeper than issues with technology, though. Finding a space to work at home is a challenge for all of us, but many children don't have a desk or their own bedroom. There has been a repeated assertion from the Secretary of State that live lessons are somehow the gold standard, but even Ofsted agree that remote learning doesn't have to mean live lessons. A quiet place in the house is not always an option, and we need to take into account that for many reasons, some children don't want their peers to see inside their home. The provision of basic resources, pens, colouring pencils, paints and paintbrushes, cannot be met by schools whose budgets have been cut year after year. There are charity groups who are currently being overwhelmed with requests to provide stationery to school children, and I know that many local districts of the NEU have stepped up, tried and deliver resourceful schools. This act of social solidarity that the NEU is pledging today will not only help address the issues faced by our students, but it will also shine a light on the true scale of the inequality they suffer. Earlier this month, when the government failed to act to protect our communities, school staff bravely stepped up and took action in their place. Again, we find ourselves in a position in which we can act where our government has not. They have failed to provide the resources our children need to learn, so we will do it instead. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was excellent, and I particularly liked your point about the profiteering from poverty, and we saw that quite clearly with what happened with free school meals, didn't we? The outsourcing of free school meals, £5 spent on free school meals, and where does the other £25 go? We have been joined by the Shadow Secretary of State for Education, Kate Green, who I know has been a champion for children against child poverty for many years. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. I really wanted to join you this evening, first of all, to say an enormous congratulations and thank you to the NEU, because this is an utterly inspiring campaign, and also to your partners, the Daily Mirror and Viking. You're doing something both very, very obvious, very simple in a way, and unbelievably important for children and young people, because for all the chat about using technology and laptops and dongles and digital access and all of the rest, all of which is massively important, I think it's pretty heartbreaking that we still have children who don't even have access to a pad of paper and some stationery to draw pictures, to write a story, to create in their own homes when they can't be in school. So you're doing something simple, but something remarkable and something huge, actually, because when the power of a union is big, and with the coverage that the NEU has, decides to do something like this, we know it's going to reach hundreds of thousands of households up and down the country. We know it's going to have a huge footprint and make a very, very big difference. And as you say, Daniel, my background before I came into Parliament was that I worked at the Child Poverty Action Group. And I know what you know as teachers, as education professionals, that poverty at home inhibits children's learning. It means your job as teachers is so much harder. You can't achieve everything for the kids you're educating if they are suffering from poverty and deprivation at home. And the more that you're doing, both to improve what happens when they're being taught by you directly, but also the way that they can expand their own learning at home with their parents, with their families, trying things out, having fun, drawing, creating, making, you're making a difference to them in every possible way. And it's something that I think will have a really lasting impact on the education and development of the children that you directly but also indirectly support. So I just want to say how thrilled I am to be with you as you launch this incredible campaign, how much I want to congratulate you for getting off the ground, and pledging our support for anything we can do to showcase it and celebrate it with you, and to make sure that it achieves all that I know it's going to be capable of. And Daniel, just really to conclude by saying an enormous thank you to NEU members for taking this on. It's really important, but it doesn't surprise me. I know as education professionals, as teachers, that nothing is more important to you than the children that you work with and are responsible for. And it comes as no surprise to me that you want to do this as a union. And I just wish you every success with what I know is going to be a brilliant campaign.
Thank you so much, Kate, and thank you for joining us in that campaign. As we say, we just really hope to shine a light on this this tragedy that is that has been allowed to unroll over the best part of a decade. I'm going to bring back in Mary Balstead for a couple of minutes, just to shed some light on what's happening on Thursday. So welcome back, Mary.
Thanks, Daniel. It will be a couple of minutes because I know that people want their dinner. But on Thursday, the NEU is going to publish its second version of its education recovery plan. We published one on the 10th of June last year. We sent it to Boris Johnson. We didn't get a reply. So we thought we'd do it again. And the plan has 3 sections. First section is safety in schools and colleges. So how do we get a safe return to schools and colleges? And that will be covering about limiting the number of students on site, around PPE, face coverings, ventilation, vaccination, and specific support for our members working in SEND settings. Secondly, we're talking about part 2 is about building a better for the nation's children and young people. So we'll be talking about what the government needs to do to end child poverty, guarantee access of all pupils to broadband and to laptops, a national plan for children's well-being, a welfare reform, so that parents are not working for their poverty. And what do we need to do to ensure that all children live in homes where parents are earning enough or have enough so that they can house, feed, clothe their children and live a decent life in the 21st century. And the third section of our education recovery plan is about building a better education system. So a reintegration plan, employing supply teachers and employing more teachers and support staff who will be needed as we build back better, developing and properly resourcing a different curriculum, and plans to be made for transition years and plans for the exams, not just for this year, but for the future, and getting an assessment system that works and doesn't let our children and young people down. So it's a really comprehensive piece of work. It takes safety, it takes child welfare, and it takes the best education provision. We'll be launching it on Thursday. Do look out for that because we think that's really important. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary. And yeah, just to echo, please do look out for that on Thursday. We have had over £5,000 donated so far by 204 donations. So thank you to everybody who's already started this campaign building. But thank you very much this evening to our members, to Kate Green, to Sarah, to Mary, and to the Mirror. The NEU stands in solidarity with our educators nationally and the communities that we serve. Now, we know that we can't reach every child, but we are going to step up and do as much as we can. And the more that you make your voices heard, the more reach we have. So spread the word, sign and share the online petition. If you feel able to, get in touch to let us know your story. We want to provide the Mirror with as many case studies of what's really happening in schools as possible. We would want to shine a light on the systemic injustice that exists for our children. And we want to show the nation the amazing work that our members do on the ground in tackling child poverty. And we are doing this for more than just moral reasons alone. Child poverty is something that harms us all. It leads to a full wastage of human creativity. The doctors, the scientists, the artists that are lost because of child poverty adds to the tragedy of this political choice. When our children suffer and are held back, our communities suffer and are held back, and our society is held back. What we're doing is not about charity. This is an act of solidarity from our educators to our families. We want to lead by example and force the government to step up and tackle child poverty head on. And we want to make sure that no child is left behind and every child has what they need to learn. So thank you very much.